working now, I think. So, hello everybody, welcome along to the Las Vegas Grand Prix. Working now, I think. Yeah, there we go. So, welcome along to the Las Vegas Grand Prix, everybody. I'm gonna try and get the audio working, the lighting a bit better, so give me a few seconds. But welcome along, like I said, to Las Vegas Grand Prix, around the Las Vegas Strip, of course, and 3.853 miles, 6.201 kilometers around this circuit, the second fastest circuit on the Formula 1 calendar, apart from the Autodromo Nazionale di Monza. There's 17 turns around this street circuit, and it's very technically challenging for the drivers. It's a combination of speed and turns. And they've gone with the softest three tyres, the C5, the C4 and the C3 option, which are the soft, medium and hards. So I'm quickly going to get the lighting sorted. Yeah. That's manageable, I think. So yes, we are now running through the grid order, and we're into the top 10 now. So Lewis Hamilton is starting 10th on the grid, and then 9th is Fernando Alonso, 8th is Kevin Magnussen, and 7th is Valtteri Bottas. And then we've got the Williams, who have their highest combined qualifying of the season, with 6th for Logan Sargent and 5th for Alex Albon. Pierre Gasly starts 4th on the grid, alongside George Russell. And then the front row, a very common front row, is Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc. But we're now getting ready for the start of the first Las Vegas Grand Prix since 1982, which was won by Michele Alboreto, who is sadly no longer with us. And then as for the 1981 winner was an Australian. Could Oscar Piastri or Daniel Ricciardo potentially repeat that feat? I heavily doubt so, but who knows. Then again, there are many gambles that go on in Las Vegas, and some people might want to go for a gamble here to try and get themselves up the order. It's going to be very interesting because Lewis Hamilton and Carlos Sainz and Sergio Perez are all starting in the mid-pack, despite being cars that are capable of running at the front. Hamilton had a poor qualifying. Sainz had no issues whatsoever. He actually qualified second. However, he's got a 10th-place grid penalty due to issues that isn't actually his fault. But yeah, we're getting ready now for the beginning of the Las Vegas Grand Prix, and the formation lap should be starting in moments. Unlike most other streams, I am actually within sync, so we are pretty well covered on that end. I will move my camera, there we go, right in the middle of the frame now. So you've got right here right here you've got the team standings, and then right here you've got the driver standings. So that's pretty cool. I was working on that late last night. Haven't gotten much sleep, so once this race is done, I'm going straight back to sleep again. But yes, this is what Formula 1's like for the average American or the average Kiwi, or the average Aussie in Formula 1. Because most races are in Europe, meaning that it's late at night for Kiwis or Aussies, and early in the morning for Americans. So they're getting their own back on us, and with this race. And yeah, when I heard about this being a night race, I was thinking, oh god, not another one of those. It does look very nice though. They've got like a sphere that they spent quite a lot of money on, so that'll be very interesting. As for the strategy, I think it's going to be a two-stop a big concern heading into this weekend was the tire temperatures and whether or not we would see cars being able to run at the temperatures of the Las Vegas Strip. Most people are probably wearing jackets or jumpers because it is not a very warm day. The fastest pit stop, of course, this season and in F1 history goes to McLaren, a 1.8 second pit stop in Qatar. And there's loads of sponsorship stuff around the circuit as Charles Leclerc is heading past the Caesars Palace sign, which reminds us of a different era in Formula 1 history, of course. And like I said, the previous two winners in Las Vegas in 1982, Michele Alboreto won for Tyrrell, his first Grand Prix win, and then by contrast in 1981, Alan Jones taking his final Grand Prix win and the final win for an Aussie until, drumroll please, the 2009 German Grand Prix when Mark Webber won for Red Bull. Good morning, Merlin's beard. How are you doing on this fine but quite cold morning? I've actually got two different layers on. You won't be able to see it though because I'm wearing a vest under this, so I've got two layers on. And I'm wearing my trousers even though I'm gonna go straight back to bed after this. So yeah, there's loads of big names that are here at the Las Vegas Grand Prix, and I suppose that's another thing that people were talking about, and that was how much of a gimmick this was. But the Grand Prix attendance overall is 315,000, which is not surprising to me because Formula 1 is becoming very popular in the United States. But they're heading around the final corner now, which isn't really much of a corner, and there's one of the shareholders in Alpine, Rob McElhenney, and his wife Caitlin Olsen. But yeah, we're getting ready now. The first two cars are already lined up in their grid spots. I am in India right now and it's unnaturally hot here, anything but cold. Well, in your case, very warm then. So yeah, I'm in Scotland. It's never ever warm here, so yeah. But the final, we're about halfway through the order now in terms of cars that are getting lined up. We've got Perez and then Sainz lining up, and the final cars are now getting onto the grid. We're on board with Pierre Gasly's Alpine, and like I said, the grid order, very quickly, I'll run through it in the top 5 anyway. It's Leclerc, Verstappen, Russell, Gasly, and then Albon, and then following him it's Sargent, Bottas. And we're getting ready for the start now. 2, 3, 4, 5 red lights for the Las Vegas Grand Prix. The first one since 1982. And we're away. And it's a good start from Max Verstappen. Can he get the lead in towards turn 1? It looks as though he will. He's going to go down the inside Charles Leclerc. And both of them have gone off the track. George Russell trying to get into the lead. And there's a spin. Fernando Alonso spun in the background. I think he had contact. And that looks to be bad for him. He's running down the order. He's gone down the order right down to the bottom. And Alex Albon has jumped up to 4th from the beginning. Leclerc's going to try and get back ahead of Verstappen again as they head in towards turn number 3, but he's unable to get ahead. We've still got that yellow flag in sector 1. I wonder if one of the cars has stopped. I don't know if it actually was Fernando Alonso. It might have been Lance Stroll that got himself caught up in the drama, because there is an Aston Martin that is quite high up the order, and I think that might be Fernando Alonso that is high up the order, so I think it might have been Lance Stroll. But I'm not entirely sure, as we've got loads of battling going on through the middle of the field. Verstappen's already making a run for it though, as Gasly's still ahead of Albon. I got that wrong. I thought Albon was up into 4th, but he wasn't. And Verstappen leads from Leclerc, Russell, Gasly, Albon, and then the Haas of Nico Hülkenberg's got himself up into 6th, which is a fantastic start for him. Or is it Magnussen? I think it's Magnussen actually. And then... oh, yeah, it is. It was Fernando Alonso who was involved in that incident at the very start of the race. He's got damage to his car, apparently. It was him and Valtteri Bottas, and Carlos Sainz got himself caught up in it as well, as Logan Sargent and Kevin Magnussen are dueling for 7th place here. And Magnussen is now behind Sargent because he's got Ocon and Lance Stroll now behind him as well. Perez has not had a good start compared to the others, and we've got a virtual safety car to clean up some of the damage, and Lewis Hamilton's dropped places as well off the start, so it's not been a good start for those starting in the mid-pack, and Perez, Hamilton and Sainz. The only one who actually kept it clean, I think, was Perez, because Perez hasn't lost any places, unlike Hamilton and Sainz. But there is Perez. He has come into the pit lane. I think he does have damage, and there is Verstappen team radio, but unfortunately I can't hear it because they've not got the transcript for it. And they are changing Perez's nose cone, and that's the risk when you start in the mid-pack, that you're going to get caught up in something. And that is what's happened here with him and Fernando Alonso, as Fernando Alonso is also coming in, as is Valtteri Bottas. And I think the three of them have got damage. I think Sainz isn't actually... I don't think he actually has damage on his car. He actually was just trying to avoid the chaos at turn 1. What are your expectations for the Las Vegas Grand Prix this year, considering it's a relatively new addition to the Formula 1 calendar? I've not really got very high standards for it, because for a number of reasons. First of all, the drama that happened on Friday with Sainz certainly didn't help it out. As we see a shot of the start, and now we can see what happened. I'll answer your question in a second. And what happened was, Fernando Alonso, he just went really deep into the corner, and he ended up collecting... I think he ended up collecting a car with him. I didn't see who it was though. So Leclerc and Verstappen were battling into turn 1, and Verstappen forced him off, is what Leclerc's going to be saying. I think he... I mean, I'll need to look at the replay from Verstappen's perspective, and yeah, he did. He did force him off. Verstappen goes completely off the track. So he should have to give that place back to Leclerc, because not only did Verstappen fully go off the track, but he wasn't even ahead of him heading into the corner. But here's a replay of Logan Sargent's start, and he did get a very good start. The virtual safety car is ending. So what happened was, Alonso went down the inside, and he collected Nico Hülkenberg. It was the Haas that he collected, and that is what resulted in him losing so much ground in this race. Oh wait, was it Hülkenberg? No, I don't know who it was that he collected, but he collected a car with him, and I'm not actually sure who it was. I didn't get a good look at the replay, but to answer your question, my standards aren't very high, for a number of reasons. First of all, because of what happened on Friday. Second of all, because it's another race in America, and if I'm being completely honest, we don't need 3 races in America. 1, maybe 2 at most, is good. 3 is unhealthy, and I think Formula 1 does have a bit of an unhealthy obsession with the States. Of course, they're trying to broaden their market, but keep in mind, the whole continent of Africa doesn't have a race. I mean, some countries aren't suitable to host races due to economical reasons, and poverty and famine, but South Africa doesn't have that problem. I mean, if Formula 1 held Grand Prix during the apartheid era of South Africa, why can't they hold them now? That's my question. There was a weird camera shot there. I think... Oh, and someone's in the wall, and that is Lando Norris. Lando Norris is out of the Grand Prix, and that is dreadful for McLaren, and that is a safety car as well. And I think Esteban Ocon illegally got past Kevin Magnussen there, but we are now down to 19 runners in this race. Lando Norris has crashed at the last corner of the race, or sorry, I should say, turn 12 of this race, I should say. And that is a big one. He's gone off straight into the barriers, and that is not good news for him. And I think that ends a very good run of form for him. He was scoring loads and loads of podiums. I think he actually took multiple second places in a row up until this race, and that is not good for McLaren and their race against Aston Martin. And Lance Stroll has now come into the pits as well. It is a 50-lap race, and we're already 4 laps into the race. So I think Aston Martin are going to be trying to maybe a 2-stop, maybe even a 1-stop if they're going for it here, with Stroll and Sainz both in the pits, going onto the hard compound. But yeah, I'm trying to have a little look at the form of Lando Norris, because that, of course, has come to an end due to his crash. And I'm correct in assuming he's had a good run of form. He's scored podiums in every race apart from Mexico City since Singapore. He finished second in Singapore and Japan, third in Qatar, second in America, and second in Sao Paulo. So that his point scoring streak has ended, and he lost the back end of the car heading into the corner, and that is a big one. So because it's a swooping corner heading into a braking zone, Norris lost the back end of the car, and I don't know if that would have been because of tire temperatures maybe. I mean, we've got an onboard now, and he just loses the car. I think it might be because of rear tire temperature potentially. But yeah, that is a nasty accident. He's okay, of course. They wouldn't be showing a replay otherwise, due to modern day television and the like. But this is a replay of Lewis Hamilton's perspective of the crash, and that is a big one for Lando Norris. And he actually had a bit of debris come into his that hit his halo, I think, Lewis Hamilton's halo. And I don't know what he was saying, but I think he was going, "Oh, that's a big one," or something along those lines. But yeah, that is Lando Norris out of the race. He's obviously going to go to the medical centre for a checkup, because that is standard, of course, standard procedure for Formula 1 and for the safety of the drivers. But let's quickly run through the order. Of course, some of the drivers, all the drivers in fact, below Zhou Guanyu have made a pit stop, so they are technically out of sync. But it is Max Verstappen who leads, although that is very much coming into question due to the incident that happened at turn 1. And then following him is Charles Leclerc, George Russell, Pierre Gasly, Alex Albon, Logan Sargent, Esteban Ocon, then Kevin Magnussen, Nico Hülkenberg, Yuki Tsunoda, Oscar Piastri, Lewis Hamilton, Daniel Ricciardo, Zhou Guanyu, Lance Stroll, Sergio Perez, Carlos Sainz, Fernando Alonso, and Valtteri Bottas. I think the car that Alonso collected at turn 1 must have been Valtteri Bottas, because of course Alfa Romeo are running a special livery this weekend, so maybe I got that confused for the Haas because of dark colours of it. And let's see another look at the start, and let's see if my presumption is correct. So I can see the Alfa Romeo of Bottas, and Alonso dives it down the inside, and yes, it is Valtteri Bottas. I was right in saying that he was the one who got collected. So here's a replay of Fernando Alonso, and he actually gets a really, really good start. He goes up into 8th, and he's trying to make a few places into turn 1, and he's the same issue Norris has, and that is rear tyre temperatures. He's going for it a little bit too early on in the race, and drivers have to be wary. Those rear tyre temperatures are a killer. If you have cold tyres, they're not going to get the grip required to go through corners safely without having these issues. And now we're on board with Bottas, and yeah, there's not really anywhere for him to go. Perez made contact with him heading into the corner, so that certainly didn't help him out there. Perez hit his back end because Bottas was trying to react to the Alonso spin, and as a result, Perez wasn't anticipating he would brake. And so he went into the back of him, which meant that Bottas went into the back of Alonso. Here's a replay of Carlos Sainz's perspective of the incident, and he had contact as well. He ended up spinning himself. He ended up going backwards, and he hit the back of Lewis Hamilton. He hit the side of Lewis Hamilton, and Hamilton's very lucky not to have gotten a puncture there, because that could have easily been a damaged a puncture for Hamilton, because Sainz made contact with his rear tyre, although then again it was at low speed, so you could make a case as to why it didn't happen. But we've seen other incidents like that where there's been contact like that and there have been punctures. For example, Max Verstappen and Daniel Ricciardo, although that was a long time ago, 6 years ago at the Hungarian Grand Prix. That's the first example I can think of anyway. Of course, those two are in the field today. Lewis Hamilton is saying the car is okay. If you were expecting there to be an issue with this car, it would probably be to the suspension based on what you saw at turn 1. So I think he is okay. and ready to get going again. But it'll be interesting to see how the bottom 5 cars, Stroll, Perez, Sainz, Alonso and Bottas will do, because all of them have looked quite quick this weekend. The Aston Martin, the Red Bull, the Ferrari and the Alfa Romeo. The Alfa Romeo Bottas has been looking quick, not so much Joe. So that'll be interesting to see. Once we get restarted, we've got another lap of the safety car. We're on lap 6 of 50 now. And like I said, there's not been very much running at all in this race. There's been a couple of corners at most of racing. I think it was about a lap and a half actually, before there was a virtual safety car. Of course, the incident happened at turn 1. However, the virtual safety car wasn't called until the end of the first lap. And then following that, we had a lap or so of the virtual safety car. And then we had a restart. And then just as Verstappen and Leclerc, I should say, were heading around the final corner and starting lap 3 or 4 in this race, we had a safety car, an actual safety car, due to Lando Norris having an incident in which he lost the back end of the car, similar to how Alonso lost it at turn 1. However, Norris's was in a much more high-speed section of the track at turn 13, which was really not very good at all for him. But we're getting ready for the restart now. We're coming up to it, and safety car is ending at the end of this lap, so we're going to get going. Lately, it feels like the love for money is messing with the vibes of our sport. Take football for example, e.g. UEFA thinking about shipping the Champions League final to UEFA just for the cash grab. Do you know what, right? I am really glad that somebody's actually mentioned this, because honestly, I totally agree. Like you mentioned, Formula 1's doing the same, loading up races in the USA while other continents get the short. And even in cricket, the ICC letting India host big events every few years just because they're a huge market, it's pretty lame, and it's messing with the spirit of the game in the sports, if you ask me. To be fair though, the difference is India are a powerhouse in cricket. That's the main difference for me. India are a powerhouse in cricket. Formula 1 hasn't had an American Grand Prix winner, or world champion for that matter, since 1978. The last American to get a podium was 30 years ago. The last American team to win was over 40 years ago. It was Penske in 1976 with John Watson, and some people might count Shadow because they had an American license at one point, in 1977 with Alan Jones. So Verstappen's gone away now, and it's a really, really good restart for him. I'll talk about this in a minute. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to cover the race. But yeah, Verstappen's had a really good restart. He's gone for it early, and as a result, he's managed to get the jump on Leclerc. He's already got about a second on him, I would estimate, as we head in towards turn 1. George Russell just a little bit behind Leclerc. No people, the pack trying to make moves. Oscar Piastri's already going for a move on Yuki Tsunoda, trying to get those points back going for McLaren today, because of course they are in a championship battle with Aston Martin for 4th, heading into the final 2 races of the 2023 season. And last weekend showed that McLaren are susceptible to Aston Martin potentially catching them. Or should I say the last race weekend shows that, plus the poor qualifying today as well. And there goes Carlos Sainz going down the inside of Fernando Alonso. He is up into 17th place now. It's weird to see the two Spaniards fighting right at the back of the field. However, due to incidents, this is why. And we've got Valtteri Bottas, the only car left in the race behind them. We're down to 19 runners, of course, due to the DNF of Lando Norris. But yeah, as you can see there is a fight between McLaren and Aston Martin, and between Mercedes and Ferrari. 2 separate fights going on in the constructors. So there's a fight going on for 2nd and a fight going on for 4th. And then after that, you've got a fight for 7th. Really, the only places that are secure are Alpine in 6th, and Red Bull at the very lead of the constructors, who have, of course, already won it. I was considering making them a gold colour, to signify that they were champions, but then I realised, I'd rather colour code it correctly. Here's Lewis Hamilton. He started 10th, he's now 12th. of course, getting involved in the first lap drama. Carlos Sainz is swiftly making his way through the field. That Ferrari does look very quick around here. It was very quick around Monza as well, as Sainz and Perez do battle for 16th place in the order, which is something I didn't think I'd be saying heading into this weekend. And due to Sainz trying to get ahead of Perez, Alonso's gotten ahead of him again. And here we go. This is a battle going on here between Lewis Hamilton and Yuki Tsunoda. Hamilton goes around the outside, and that's a lovely overtake. It's a big gamble there from Hamilton. He's betted on green on the spinning wheel thing. I don't know what it's called. And as I say that, Oscar Piastri gets past Nico Hülkenberg, and Max Verstappen has a 5-second time penalty for the lap 1 turn 1 incident with Charles Leclerc. And I don't think he's really going to care much about it, because he easily has the pace to go for it, because he is the quickest driver on the circuit. He is pulling away from Charles Leclerc. He's got a 2.2 second gap to him at the moment. We're on lap 8 of 50 here, and it looks as though this is going to be a win for Max Verstappen already. And yes, it is a 5-second time penalty for forcing another driver off the track. See, what they should have done was they should have made him let Leclerc back through. I don't know if the FIA would have told him or not. Of course, I can't hear it because I am not listening into the audio, because I've got my TV muted for copyright reasons. But here we go. We've got a battle going on for 7th here. We're having loads of battles already, which is fun. And we've got Esteban Ocon going down the inside of Kevin Magnussen. He's unable to make the move. Magnussen outbrakes him, and Ocon's going to try and line up a move heading on to the back straight, heading into the last couple of corners of the circuit. Magnussen is trying to hold on here. Of course, it's one of Haas's 3 home races this season. Of course, they are based in Kannapolis, North Carolina, and Max Verstappen is setting fastest lap. Charles Leclerc did look like he was closing in on him a little bit though, but in the last part of the lap anyway. So we'll see how that develops. As Oscar Piastri is now behind this battle between Ocon and Hülkenberg. He didn't have a great run out of turn number 2, and Nico Hülkenberg does have a run on him, but he's just a little bit too far back. The one-stop strategy is medium hard, and I wonder if that's what the guys who pitted under the safety car are going to try. They're going to maybe try and do a one-stop. Although technically it would be a 2-stop, but really it's a 1-stop if you think about it. They're just going to the back of the field and starting fresh. And here is the Alpine of Ocon still trying to get ahead of Magnussen. Verstappen's being told he's got a time penalty, and his engineer's basically just saying exactly what I was saying. You know, you're quicker than Leclerc, you're 2 seconds ahead of him, just keep that gap going. And Verstappen said, yeah, that's fine, send them my regards. I think that's a polite way of saying screw you for ruining a bit of racing. Well, that's his perspective. My perspective is that it is a completely fair penalty. And yet, there you go. There's Esteban Ocon getting past Kevin Magnussen. He drags him into the turn where Lando Norris had his crash, turn 13. And now Oscar Piastri, the remaining McLaren in this race, the one carrying the flag as it was for McLaren, trying to get ahead of Kevin Magnussen in this race. George Russell setting fastest lap, and here comes Oscar Piastri. He's going to go down the inside. He's going to try and get ahead of Kevin Magnussen, and he's got the inside line. Magnussen's trying to keep up with him, but he isn't able to. And this track is a lot like Jeddah in terms of the first sector of the track being quite high speed. But this is going to be really interesting because Leclerc's actually kept up with him quite well. And here comes Magnussen fighting back at Magnussen. He gets back ahead of him again. Piastri, having to fight against Magnussen again. Magnussen gets back ahead of Piastri, and that is a great battle to keep an eye on. And so far, I think this has actually not been a bad race, if I'm being honest. I mean, there's loads of overtaking opportunities for the drivers. It's just the whole song and dance about it is what's concerning loads of people. It's, you know, we just want to watch the racing, not all the glitz and the glamour of races. We just want to watch some fun racing, to be honest. And there's Oscar Piastri still trying to get ahead of Kevin Magnussen. Can he make it stick this time round? Can he make it stick this lap? Meanwhile, Pierre Gasly is right behind George Russell in this race. So despite the fact that Russell was holding fastest lap, Gasly is right behind him, and there goes Piastri back ahead of Magnussen again, and Magnussen and Hülkenberg are both lost places. Both Haas's have lost places, as Lewis Hamilton is now into the points and up into 10th place. Meanwhile, the two AlphaTauris are side by side further back in the pack, and Charles Leclerc is closing in big time, as is Pierre Gasly on the leader of Max Verstappen. Leclerc is only 1.7 seconds behind him now. Gasly set a 1:39, which is over a second faster than Verstappen, I'm pretty sure, on that last lap. Perez is defending now from both Aston Martins and the Ferrari, and he's really, really bringing them back through the pack. Meanwhile, further up ahead, Ricciardo... Oh, Yuki Tsunoda's in the pits. So Daniel Ricciardo, who was battling with Yuki Tsunoda, who was on the soft tyres, has come into the pits. I've been following your channel for nearly 2 years now, and I rarely comment or live chat, but you're an extremely passionate for the sport and quite talented for a 16-year-old. Thank you very much. That's really nice. And it's good to know that people are actually watching my stuff. I've wanted to be a journalist or a broadcaster since I was 12 years old, so I kind of figured it out from an early age, which is helpful, but also a lot more stressful. Good luck and best wishes for the future. Thank you very much. Yeah, I often don't really talk about like how I ended up in this situation, but yeah, I've been watching Formula 1 since I was about yay high. Since I was a wee guy, but that was dangerous. He went and stopped again. Leclerc's complaining again about Verstappen's restart, and it is a good point because you did brake quite heavily into that corner. Of course, I'm trying to be as unbiased as possible and be balanced in my arguments, and I think that, you know, being a Formula 1 fan in general is quite difficult to not have a bias with certain teams or drivers, especially when you've grown up supporting teams, like I did with Ferrari. But I think I'm good at being unbiased. Of course, I did content for Aston Martin in the years leading up to 2023, 2021 and 2022, so I do have a bit of a relationship with them. But yeah, Lance Stroll still ahead of Carlos Sainz, and the race is beginning to settle down a bit. People are beginning to manage their tyres, trying to get them to that one stop, that key lap of lap 23, which is for the hard runners, and lap 27 for the mediums. No, sorry, vice versa, I should say. Lap 23 for the mediums, lap 27 for the hards. And Pierre Gasly still within DRS range of George Russell, but he's just not closing in enough on him to make a move. And this is a replay of Lewis Hamilton's move on Nico Hülkenberg, and it's a good overtake down the inside. It's simple yet elegant. Oh, sorry, no, that's him getting past Kevin Magnussen, I should say. So now Magnussen too has been passed, and the Haas's have gone from 7th and 9th to 10th and 12th now, or so in the order. So Haas are falling back, and now Sergio Perez has now gotten ahead of Nico Hülkenberg. He's also gotten ahead of Daniel Ricciardo, who's beginning to fall back through the order, as Lance Stroll too gets past Daniel Ricciardo and is now going to try and follow through Perez and play a game of follow the leader with him. And it's the same with the other cars behind in Carlos Sainz, Fernando Alonso and Valtteri Bottas, although Bottas is a little bit further back. Sainz is trying to get ahead. Hulkenberg isn't to the pits, and Sainz's engineer says we need action to risk overheating the car. So they're basically telling Sainz to be careful because the car is struggling a bit with the heat, and I'm surprised about that because considering how cold Las Vegas is at night, presumably anyway. I mean, they are in the desert, but you'd still think that it'd be quite cold based on where Nevada is in America. It's not like it's really in south like New Mexico or Texas. But yeah, Daniel Ricciardo is falling through the order now, and the only car that hasn't passed him yet, that's on that one-stop strategy, is Valtteri Bottas and Fernando Alonso, although Alonso looks like he's going to get past him any moment now because he's looking really, really fast compared to the AlphaTauri, who's beginning to lose ground on the other cars. Sainz has already gotten a second, so the more time Alonso spends behind Ricciardo, the more he's going to fall back from the cars on the same strategy as him. or well, I mean, it's not really a strategy. It's not really they don't really have a choice in the matter. I suppose after the first lap incident, but here comes Alonso. He is going to get ahead of Daniel Ricciardo, and now he is ahead of him and 1 second behind Carlos Sainz, as Charles Leclerc does set fastest lap. He's 1.8 seconds behind Verstappen though, so it's not a huge difference between the two in lap time. And now Lewis Hamilton is setting fastest lap, and he's 4 tenths quicker on the hard tyres. And then Sergio Perez goes and sets fastest lap, a tenth quicker than Hamilton, nearly 2 tenths quicker than Hamilton. So I think the hard tyre runners are beginning to come into this race a little bit more. The medium tyre runners are beginning to struggle a little bit on their tyres. They have to manage them a little bit more, and it's not really looking great for the medium for the medium runners at the moment. And down the inside goes Esteban Ocon on Logan Sargent, and that is a crafty overtake. It's a double left-hander, a swooping left-hander heading into a braking zone, and it's a fantastic overtake. We had a brief yellow flag in sector 2. I don't know what it was for, but somebody has had an incident. I think it might have been Valtteri Bottas. However, I am not completely sure on that because he's fallen a little bit back. But as I was saying, the medium tyre pit window has now opened. And like I said, lap 23 is that final lap where they can be on that one stop. Actually, this is the 2-stop pit window. Lap 14 to lap 23, and lap 23 is when they can pit for the one-stop strategy. And of course, what you risk with a one-stop is having worse tyre wear at the end of the race, and what you risk with a two-stop is losing too much ground due to that second pit stop, that you won't be able to make it back up over the course of the race, as Oscar Piastri now follows Esteban Ocon and getting ahead of Logan Sargent, and Lewis Hamilton is going to try and do the same, as the hard runners of Piastri and Hamilton are beginning to make their way through the order. The faster cars are beginning to get ahead of the slightly slower cars. Meanwhile, further back, Sergio Perez gets ahead of Kevin Magnussen because Magnussen has come into the pits. The fastest lap now goes to Fernando Alonso, and he's the first driver to break into the 137s in this race. Perez's fastest lap, which was the last one, was a 138.1, and Perez is trying to go for a double overtake here on the Alfa Romeo and the Haas. He's gone ahead of Zhou Guanyu, and then he's going to try and get ahead of the Haas of he was trying to get ahead of the Haas of Nico Hülkenberg, but in the end Hülkenberg did come into the pits. But as I said, Alonso was the first driver in the 37s, so this is the transition happening. And look at this, Charles Leclerc is closed right up on Max Verstappen, the Ferrari, looking very, very strong in this race. And could they actually be quick enough over a race distance to challenge Red Bull? See, that's been the problem all year for teams. In qualifying, they have been on pace with the Red Bull, the McLarens, the Ferraris, the Mercedes, in some races even the Aston Martin. However, in the race, the Red Bull has had the pace over a stint over the other cars, whether that be on its tyre wear or on its race management, to be honest, just in general, tyre temperatures, etc. But Charles Leclerc is now within half a second almost of Max Verstappen as George Russell comes into the pits. He's doing an undercut on Pierre Gasly, trying to make sure he's still ahead of him. He is doing that two-stop strategy, unless Mercedes and Russell do big tyre management. But Russell is not renowned for his tyre management. He's renowned for his race pace, not his tyre management. As they come into turn 3, the two leaders, Verstappen and Leclerc, the two that many people predicted would have a battle of a generation, essentially, in 2022. However, it did not happen due to the fact the Ferrari were struggling a lot in many different factors. However, those factors seem to have been rectified now, as Ferrari are looking a lot more reliable in races. Their strategies are better, their management is better of situations, and Leclerc looks as though he could be a genuine contender for this race victory here, as Verstappen is really struggling. As Verstappen says, my tyres are going to get really beeped, mate, which shows that he is struggling. He's trying to pull away from Leclerc, but it seems that Ferrari is just so good on its tyres during these stints, which is surprising considering how quick the Red Bull usually is on its tyres. As here comes Charles Leclerc, he's going down the inside and he takes the race lead from Max Verstappen, and now Verstappen has it all to do He's got to get back ahead of Leclerc again, and he's got a 5-second time penalty. As Esteban Ocon gets ahead of Alex Albon for 4th, as Max Verstappen finally comes into the pits on lap 17. He's doing a 2-stop, and I think this is gonna be when the race gets interesting, because if you look at the standings, George Russell is behind Fernando Alonso and Sainz and Perez, so these guys are gonna have a lot to do. On the restart, Verstappen had his 5-second time penalty in the pits, and I wonder, will he be behind George Russell in this race? I think he might be, and he will be. There goes George Russell past Max Verstappen, and Verstappen's down to 3rd in the order now, as he is now behind George Russell in this race, and he might even be 4th if Gasly has a good enough in-lap. And Hamilton says he's got a puncture. He is running in 6th, but he is dropping down the order a little bit. And let's see what's happened to make him have that puncture. As they head into the corner, there is contact. Oh, and that's why. It's the second time Hamilton's had contact on that rear tyre. And Oscar Piastri, I think, might have front wing damage. He did have to come into the pits instantly afterwards. And Hamilton does look like he is struggling a bit here. Carlos Sainz is closing in on him a lot, and Sainz is going to probably get ahead of him heading in towards, I don't know what corner of the track this is, but yeah, Hamilton's really struggling. He has got a puncture, and he's just trying to stay out the way of the other cars, and he's actually gone off there, and he's hit the bollard, and I wonder if he'll get a fine for that, because some people may consider that to be dangerous driving, despite the circumstances. So there goes Lewis Hamilton, and he is pretty much out of contention now, you'd argue, for this race win. I mean, his qualifying certainly didn't help him out. However, now it is almost certain that he will not be fighting. Hamilton's saying the car isn't stopping, and that shows you need those rear tyres in this race, because if you aren't able to keep the temperatures going of the tyres and stay out of trouble, then you'll end up with a puncture. And there goes Max Verstappen past Lewis Hamilton now. And Verstappen's actually lost 3 seconds, so Gasly is going to be comfortably ahead of Sainz, of Verstappen in the order, you'd think. Although it says on the time screen that he is behind him at the moment, so I think Gasly could be behind Verstappen. Russell's done a really, really good strategy. He's done a really, really good undercut, as Hamilton now comes into the pits, but he's lost a lot of time. And there is an investigation, a noted... The stewards have noted that incident between Piastri and Hamilton, which caused Hamilton to get that puncture. Hamilton is now right at the back of the order, alongside Daniel Ricciardo. And yeah, that's a bit risky what Hamilton did there, although then again, he did say the car wasn't able to stop. Personally, based on what he said there, I wouldn't give him a penalty, because you can see this on his onboard. He's trying to brake for the corner. He's trying to make the corner. He realizes midway through braking that he can't, and brakes and tries to turn because otherwise he'll go straight on. So he was trying to avoid causing a crash with somebody. And there goes Sergio Perez past Esteban Ocon. And now we've got a very mixed running in this race due to... Have I stood on the remote? I don't know what's happened there. Anyway, the gap between Verstappen and Leclerc is 21 seconds. So as it stands, Verstappen will be 7 seconds behind Leclerc in this race. And they probably will have to go through the pack. Apologies, everybody. I am quite tired because it's a 6 a.m. start. It's 20 to 7 right now. So I'm struggling a lot with my with staying awake and of course keeping myself going. But this race has been quite entertaining so far. I'd give it a solid 7 or 8 out of 10. If I had to say an exact figure, I'd probably say 7.5. As here's a battle going on between Zhou Guanyu and George Russell for 7th. Russell trying to get ahead of Zhou. Of course, Zhou is on a completely different strategy to Russell. Zhou's going to try and attempt the 1-stop. Meanwhile, Russell's stuck behind him in this race. The 2-stop runners are running very high up in the order right now. 2nd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 12th. Well, Bottas is the outlier there, being in 12th. As Perez is running in 2nd at the moment. Stroll's running in 4th. Sainz in 5th. And Alonso in 6th. So this will be a very, very, very interesting race of strategy. And we're going to see whether or not these guys are going to try and pit only one more time after this, because nearly everybody's on a two-stop strategy. Leclerc's trying to extend his stint and get to that crucial lap 23, I should say, because if Leclerc and Esteban Ocon can get to lap 23, they could go to the end of the race theoretically on a one-stop, and that would put Max Verstappen even further behind in this race, because he would have to not only manage his tyres if he's trying to do a one-stop, but also he'd have to gain quite a bit of time on Leclerc, because he's 7 seconds back from him as it stands. Verstappen is behind Zhou Guanyu in this race, and he's being held up by him in the first sector of the track, so that's not going to help him out either, because he's losing time to Leclerc. Leclerc has got free air, has got clean air in this race, crucially, so even if Verstappen is closing in, he's got to get past Zhou, and he can't get through in the first sector. We've got a yellow flag in sector 2, briefly, although the track is clear once again, so somebody must have ran wide or made a brief mistake, quickly rectified it and got going again, but Zhou is holding Verstappen up really well here, and the Ferrari are going to be thanking Alfa Romeo very much for that, because now Verstappen has it all to do, plus Zhou holding him up has really damaged his race, as Verstappen finally gets ahead of Zhou, but it took him the majority of the lap. He didn't get ahead until turn 12. Considering there's only 17 corners in this track, that is not very good at all for Verstappen. But here's a replay of the overtake Leclerc made on Verstappen, and the race has come full circle for Leclerc. He got past at the start unfairly, Verstappen got penalised for it, and then Leclerc had the pace, and before the end of the first stint, he got back ahead of Verstappen again, and things are looking good for Leclerc at the moment. And what I like about these races is where there's multiple strategy choices, is crucially you don't know what each team's going to do or what the order is going to look like after specific things happen in the race. For example, Perez is 13 seconds behind Leclerc right now, and they're on the same strategy pretty much. Perez and Alonso, Sainz, Stroll and Bottas are all basically starting from Route 1. They're starting from the bottom of the pack, basically, on the same strategy as everybody else is, except they are on the hard tyres, so they're trying to extend their stint. Because their incidents happened early on in the race, and because of the safety cars, they have been able to manage their tyres, and I wonder if due to the safety cars, some drivers might actually be able to do that one stop and pit a few laps earlier, such as the likes of Gasly, Albon, Russell and Verstappen, who pitted 4 or 5 laps ago, about 7 or 8 laps before the pit window is actually, open for the teams that are trying that one stop. And speaking of teams trying the one stop, Leclerc is now coming into the pits, and he's going to have a good advantage to Verstappen. I'm having a look at the order now, and he should be at least 4 seconds ahead if he has a standard pit stop time, as Fernando Alonso is battling with George Russell here for 5th place, and this is probably for position. Both of them need to make one more pit stop most likely in this race. Of course though, if Russell is trying to go to the end on this one stop strategy, this is going to be important for him to try and clear Fernando Alonso, because Max Verstappen is setting the pace in this race. Charles Leclerc comes out in 3rd. He's only behind Lance Stroll and Sergio Perez in this race, although Stroll is yet to pit for a second time. And things are looking really good for Leclerc at the moment, because he's got a comfortable 4.3 second gap to Verstappen, and a grand total of 3 cars between them. Leclerc's going to try and get past Stroll as quickly as he can and try and bridge that gap even further, because whilst Alonso and Russell are battling for 5th, Verstappen's sitting behind them trying to figure out how to get ahead of them both, because these two are very similar on pace. It doesn't matter about the tyre life difference, because, well, seemingly anyway, because Alonso's done a really good job at defending, like he did with Perez in Brazil. He is doing a very, very good job at managing the gap with Russell and is able to actually battle with him. Although here comes Russell now, and is he going to be able to get ahead of him finally? And it looks like he has, and he has indeed gotten ahead of him in this race. Russell is battling Verstappen for second place at the moment, so Verstappen is going to have to try and get past Alonso as soon as possible here. Otherwise, he is going to lose more and more time to Russell, and most importantly of all, to Leclerc. Leclerc's gap to Stroll has gone down massively, and so things are looking really, really good for Leclerc in this race, and he has the advantage. Verstappen's going to go for it into turn 1. He does get ahead of Alonso, but he is losing time over fist to Leclerc. Leclerc's got to clear Stroll as soon as possible and make sure he doesn't get held up behind him like Verstappen did with Alonso and Russell, and that is going to be really important for this race, because if Leclerc can clear Stroll, he's as good as gold basically, because he's, looking so good, and because he's got track position, he holds the advantage on Max Verstappen in this race. And yeah, he's got a very, very good gap at the moment that he can manage, and it's a manageable gap for him because of how poor Verstappen's first stint was. And let's just be honest, it was poor. He was leading, however, he lost time to Leclerc, and in the end lost track position to him by the end of the first stint. In fact, the very lap Leclerc got ahead of him, Alonso actually pitted for Verstappen, I should say, pitted for a new set of tyres. Verstappen is now behind Russell, and Leclerc's not really making much of an impression on Stroll here, as he is trying to catch him, but he's not doing a great job of it, as Verstappen battling with Russell here for 5th place, and he's trying to get ahead of him, but Russell's got a good bit of pace on him. Verstappen is the quicker driver and in the quicker car, and Verstappen's had a bit of oversteer there, so he's ran a bit wide into turn 1. And let's see a replay of Charles Leclerc's pit stop, and it was a really slow pit stop. Let's be honest, 3.9 seconds. They're struggling on the front right to try and get him to get out the pits, and there is Carlos Sainz, and he is holding up George Russell and Max Verstappen now. Now, if he's trying to do a solid for his good pal Charles, he's gonna have to hold them both up like he's defending for his Ferrari seat. And he's not, funnily enough, because he is ahead of Charles Leclerc in the standings. He is 5th in the driver's standings. He's ahead of George Russell in the standings. It's so weird that the main drivers who are running high in this race for each team are the drivers that are lower than their teammates in the standings. Russell and Leclerc and Stroll are all running ahead of their teammates despite being behind them in the championship order, and also Oscar Piastri, but that's due to Lando Norris's DNF. As here comes George Russell, he's going through on Carlos Sainz now, and he's trying to get himself ahead of him. He's got himself up into 4th, and we may have a 3-way fight for the win here, as Max Verstappen follows through on his old Toro Rosso teammate, Carlos Sainz. He gets ahead of him and up into 5th place in this race, and Verstappen and Russell are now chasing down Charles Leclerc, as Leclerc closes up on Stroll, trying to get a car in between them, but these two are going to push like hell. They might even risk going for a 2-stop, or risk having tyre problems at the end for it, as Esteban Ocon gets past Alex Albon for 11th in the order. So this is going to be a 3-way fight for the win here by the looks of things, between Leclerc, Russell and Verstappen, and it's the first time in ages that the three of them are line astern on the circuit in terms of order. They've got 3 seconds to close on Leclerc. Esteban Ocon sets the fastest lap of a 1:37.677, and that's the second fastest lap to actually enter in the into the 1:37s, I believe, as Fernando Alonso set a fastest lap earlier on in the race in the 1:37s, although I think Verstappen and Russell have certainly been running in times similar to that, especially Verstappen in this stint so far. Now Leclerc is within DRS of Lance Stroll, as these two, Russell and Verstappen, do battle. Verstappen's going to try and go down the inside, and there's contact! There's contact between the two. Russell has lost his front wing, and Verstappen might be in trouble once again, because that was a little bit reckless from Verstappen there. I think Russell picked up some damage there, and Russell is going to be absolutely fuming at that. As Leclerc gets ahead of Lance Stroll, heading into turn 13, executing a move that Verstappen wished he could do. But Russell has lost a bit of time to Verstappen there. He's still within DRS of him, but he has got a car. And that move shows desperation for Verstappen, because it shows he is far behind Leclerc. He needs to get ahead of him. He needs to try and get ahead of George Russell. Now the question is, has Verstappen picked up damage from that? And I can't hear it. Mate, he just turns in on me. Check my tyre front wing. And, we'll have to see a replay. Tyre is okay for now. Stay out for now, is what Gianpiero Lambiase, who despite his Italian name is actually dead British, is saying to Max Verstappen. And I guess that move does show desperation a little bit, but then again, Verstappen did go for a move there earlier on in the race on Zhou. However, the big difference is that Mercedes is far quicker than the Alfa Romeo of Zhou, as well as the talent difference between Russell and Zhou. It took Zhou 3 seasons to finish top 3 in the standings in Formula 2. George Russell won it in his maiden season. And I don't really think Russell did turn in on him, because there's nothing else he can do there. They're side by side. The Russell seeds or they collide. That's the way I see it. Verstappen wasn't even ahead heading into the corner. That's Verstappen's fault again. Verstappen's blaming Russell for it, but Russell was ahead of him heading into the corner. Russell doesn't need to leave him space unless they are side by side. And I think Russell does have damage to the floor of his car, and we've got a safety car due to the debris, and that is going to massively benefit Sergio Perez, because Perez could pit under the safety car and come out ahead of Leclerc. Yeah, if Perez pits, he'll come out ahead of Leclerc in this race, and Verstappen is also going to pit. I wonder if Leclerc will follow suit and pit for the mediums, because if he pits for the mediums now, he will go to the end of the race, and we are going to find out if Leclerc is pitting, and he is not. So Leclerc is actually out ahead of Perez, but this is massively going to benefit the guys who had the damage on lap 1. The guys like Perez, the guys like Alonso, the guys like Sainz, they're all going to benefit massively from this, and keeping Leclerc out is a big risk from Ferrari here. Let's see if it pays off for them. And the order is all mixed up now and jingled up, because it's now Leclerc, and then it's Perez in second, Gasly, Piastri, Verstappen, Ocon, Stroll, Albon, Russell, Sainz, Sargent, Alonso, Zhou, Magnussen, Hülkenberg, Hamilton, Ricardo, Bottas, and Tsunoda. And Leclerc has got a lead. However, this is going to be interesting, because it's just like Silverstone last year, isn't it? Leclerc in the lead before the pit stops. He doesn't pit under the safety car, and he ends up falling behind in the order. However, the main difference is these guys aren't pitting for softs, and it's not near the end of the race. We are about halfway through the race here, so if Leclerc doesn't pit, it's not going to make as big a difference as it did in Silverstone last year, because it wasn't near the end of the race where he was on hard tyres. Actually, I think Leclerc has actually gained from this, if anything, because he pitted only 6 laps ago. Those hard tyres aren't that old. They can go 30 laps or so. So I think Leclerc's okay in this race at the moment. I think that if he can just manage his situation, he could still win this race. However, it is Formula 1, and anything can happen. And often it does, as the late great Murray Walker would say. But the guys who have only pitted once in this race are Leclerc, Gasly, Piastri, Ocon, Albon, Sargent, Zhou, and Ricardo. Everybody else has pitted twice in this race, and there we're going to see a replay of Carlos Sainz's pit stop, and let's see what's happened here. Are they going to be investigating an unsafe release, perhaps? No, they're not. I think they're just showing that replay just to see how quick of a pit stop it was. And Verstappen and Russell, the incident is under investigation. So, and some people might argue that it was an unsafe release there from one of the cars. I think there was an unsafe release there. I'm not sure who it was, though. I swear I saw two cars side by side, and you could argue that was an unsafe release there between Verstappen and Stroll, because Stroll did come out a little bit too close to Verstappen for my liking anyway. So Verstappen and Russell are under investigation, and I think it will be Verstappen who will be punished out of the two, because if you're being honest, there's nothing George Russell can really do there. Whilst he's ahead, the only way he's going to avoid that collision is if he brakes so hard that he basically steers left and avoids Verstappen entirely. And he's not going to do that. He's not going to cede the position. Verstappen's behind him heading into the corner. So my perspective of it is, in order for a driver to leave you space, you have to be side by side for them to actually give you that space, give you that respect. And that's what the rules are. Oh, and Marshall's fallen there, trying to pick up some of the debris. He's okay. Gotten running again. But he will probably be humiliated for a while by other people. But yeah, these marshals, they're heroes. What they do, absolutely fantastic work. And I think that the safety of Formula One nowadays, as well as other sports, especially IndyCar. IndyCar's safety is phenomenal. They're within 30 seconds. The medical crews are on site of the accident, and the AMR safety team is what the name of the IndyCar version of the stewards are. And there's Sergio Perez, who is running second in this place. He is in the hot seat now. He is ahead of Verstappen on merit. And this is going to be a really interesting restart, because the order, like I said, it's all mixed up. And let's see what's happening with Leclerc here. Oh, he nearly lost the car under the safety car there. He's trying to keep his tires warm. He said, I nearly lost it. The tires are so expletive cold. They are, and that is exactly what I was saying earlier on in the stream earlier on in the race. These tires are very, very, very cold. And Leclerc, we're getting ready for the restart now. Our safety car is ending, and we are going to go green. Leclerc controlling the field for the first time in a long time for a safety car restart. I don't remember the last time he was actually in the lead for a safety car restart, but Perez is waiting for Leclerc to go, and I think we all know when Leclerc's going to go. He's going to go off the exit of turn 13, I reckon, and let's see if I'm correct in assuming that. And he has gone for it on the exit of turn 13. He's had a good restart there. He has got a bit of a gap in Perez. How has Russell got a penalty for that? How has George Russell got a penalty for that? Right, let's see what Twitter makes of it. Let's see what Twitter makes of the whole collision between Russell and Verstappen. But while all that's going on, Fernando Alonso dueling with Logan Sargent in this race. Alex Albon getting ahead of Lance Stroll. And let's see what Twitter makes of that collision. And this race is actual chaos. And here we go again. Sigh. Russell losing a wheel cover. Let's see if there's anybody saying... I think George was a bit clumsy on the outside there. I think Max had a fair shot. I disagree. I think that Verstappen was a little bit behind, and I thought this would be a common take that people were going to say, but actually, it seems my opinion is a little bit unpopular here about the whole incident. Wind has suddenly picked up, and that's what's so incredible about Formula One, right? The drivers can tell the tiniest of differences in the conditions because of how the car's handling, or because of the G-forces heading into specific corners of the circuit. Perez is within DRS range of Leclerc now, and can Leclerc stay ahead of Perez? Because it's going to be difficult here. He does seem to be a little bit slower than him, although Verstappen is under investigation for an unsafe release. Again, I don't know why it's Verstappen that's under investigation. It was Stroll who actually went out, unless you're talking about the actual, leaving the pit lane itself, in which case, and heading back out onto the track, by which case I'd understand that because of the whole incident with Stroll. But you've got to then look back to how that happened in the first place, as Fernando Alonso and Carlos Sainz, the two Spaniards, are dueling for 10th place here. George Russell is in 9th place. His car seems to be okay at the moment. Although he is losing a little bit of ground to Stroll. Leclerc is still in the lead, and Oscar Piastri is now third. He's gotten ahead of Gasly in the race, and Verstappen now behind Gasly, and then behind him is Ocon. He's in an Alpine sandwich, and this race has actually been really, really good. I've actually enjoyed it. This has probably been the best American race this season, out of this Miami and Kota. This has probably been the best race of the season, and I think it's helped that it's actually been during winter, because it meant that the drivers have had to really work for it, especially with their tyres, and also because Red Bull have slowly lost pace to the rest of the field over the course of the season. Perez is right behind Leclerc here. 6/10 is the gap. Can Perez try and get ahead of Leclerc? Could Perez get his first win since Azerbaijan? Is the question on everybody's lips. Or can Verstappen get past Gasly and Piastri to get ahead of Leclerc in this race? See, if I was Ferrari, I would have pitted Leclerc, because then the only driver that's in front of him is Perez. Because if he did pit, he'd only be behind Perez, because he was second in the order. He had gone ahead of Stroll. The only driver that was in front of him was Perez, and that gap, that was about 10 or so seconds between him and Perez, would have closed because of the safety car. They would have both been on new tyres, and Perez would have probably been susceptible to Leclerc, because the Ferrari does seem to be quicker than the Red Bull on equal tyres. We saw it with Verstappen and Leclerc. Leclerc was pretty even on pace with Verstappen, although as the stint went on, the Red Bull did begin to struggle on his tyres, so that'll be interesting to note. If Perez suffers from the same issues, DRS has now been enabled, so Perez is going to get that boost. He's 4.5 tenths behind Leclerc as they head in towards turn 13. Is that turn? No, I don't know if they are heading into turn 13 or not, because we're on board with Verstappen and Gasly right now, who are battling for 4th, but they are probably heading into turn 13 about now. Gasly is losing a lot of time to the front two, and that is going to be really important, because the more and more Verstappen stays behind it was the same with earlier on in the race. The more and more Verstappen's behind a slower car, the more time he loses to the front two. Perez now has DRS on Leclerc. Is he going to be able to get ahead? If I'm Ferrari, I'm thinking, what on earth have we done? What on earth have we got ourselves into? Why haven't we pitted? Because the Ferrari, the strategy team, they don't often get decisions spot on, but I think they do. They should have pitted Leclerc there. Initially, I was thinking, okay, it's a 6-lap difference. Surely it's not going to be that much, but you can actually see the difference. Perez is just able to eke more out of his tyres than Leclerc is. The difference between fresh, new tyres and 6-lap old tyres are pretty clear to see, as Oscar Piastri sets fastest lap of the race with a 1:37.1, and things are really not looking good for Leclerc here. Perez is right behind him. Piastri's also right there as well. So could Piastri potentially be an outside contender for this race, I wonder? This will be very interesting to see, because I think Piastri could be an outside contender for this race. I'm going to move this so it's like that, if I can. Oh, there we go. Now I'm in the middle of the screen again. But yeah, this is going to be a good battle between Perez and Leclerc. I wonder if Piastri is going to try and get in on this as well, because Piastri is only 1.2 behind Perez. If Leclerc can hold Perez up long enough, Piastri could get in on that battle. And then Verstappen's a further 1.5 seconds back. He did get ahead of Gasly in the end. So Verstappen is 1.5 seconds back from Piastri. So the order is as follows. It is up until Zhou, everybody on hards, and everybody on new hards, apart from Leclerc pretty much. As here comes Perez, he's going to go down the inside. Sergio Perez takes the race lead, and can he keep it? That is the main question. Sergio Perez could be on for his first win since, believe it or not, the Azerbaijan Grand Prix some 6 months ago, and that is incredible. Can Perez keep a hold of this race lead as Max Verstappen sets fastest lap? Verstappen is looking to be the quickest driver in the field at the moment, as he is closing in on the front three. Leclerc is beginning to struggle a little bit on his tyres, and Sergio Perez takes the race lead. Can he get his first win since Azerbaijan? This will be interesting. Red Bull are buzzing. They might actually have a good result for once with both of their drivers. It's not often that happens. Perez has been in poor form as of late. He is under pressure to finish second in the standings, and a win here today would seal a first ever 1-2 for Red Bull in the Drivers' Championship, believe it or not. Despite all the dominance with Max Verstappen and in the past, the great Sebastian Vettel, for Red Bull have never actually had a 1-2 in the standings. At best, they had a 1-3 in 2010 and 2011 and 2013 with Mark Webber in third and Sebastian Vettel in first. Yeah, that's crazy to think about. Red Bull have never had a 1-2 in the standings before, and of course last season Charles Leclerc finished second ahead of Sergio Perez, and this is going to be interesting to see if Verstappen can get ahead of Piastri here. He is going to outbrake him, and he does get ahead of him. I wonder if Piastri is going to try and fight that, because, well, it is a podium place he's fighting for here. The Alpines are now battling for 5th place as well. Gasly v Ocon, and I think Ocon looks like he's going to come out on top here. Fastest lap, again Max Verstappen, he's closing in hand over fist on them. Leclerc is within DRS range of Perez, and he's actually closed in a little bit there. The two Alpines are doing battle here, Gasly and Ocon, and they're going to try their best not to make contact. Of course, some of their owners are here today watching this race live in person, Rob McElhenney among them, and Ocon's like, why are we fighting like this? As he does get ahead of Gasly in the end, and he is up into 5th place. So now the order is Perez, Leclerc, Verstappen, Piastri, Ocon, Gasly, Albon, Stroll, Russell, and then it is Carlos Sainz in 10th. And I don't think very many people would have predicted this would be the order after 34 laps of 50 in this race. We are quite a ways into the race, to be fair. We're heading into the final third of the race, and this race has been very, very entertaining to watch, I have to say. And yeah, we are pretty much into the final third of the race, the final stanza, as it was, of the Grand Prix, as Max Verstappen nearly within DRS to Charles Leclerc already, and things are looking very, very good for him in this race. He looks as though, I said earlier on that he had it all to do, but that safety car and the contact with Russell has actually helped him. You'd think that having a collision with another driver would make your race worse, but actually it's helped Verstappen because it's meant that he can regroup and let Ferrari screw up in their strategy. As here's a replay of the Alpines dueling, as Gasly pretty much just lets Ocon through. I think he was told to do so because he was scared that they would have a collision. But yeah, Leclerc, he's still within DRS of Perez, so he's keeping with him. But Verstappen just looks to be the quicker out of the three, and Leclerc isn't able to do a great deal about it. He's going to have to fight this, though, if he wants to try and win the race. Verstappen was 0.3 quicker on the last lap than Leclerc, so that means he will probably be ahead of him in the next 4 laps, although that's discounting the DRS effect. So with that probability, it's probably only 1 or 2 laps, if you think about it. Leclerc 0.8 behind Perez, and things have begun to settle down a little bit in this race. Drivers are going to start saving their tyres a little bit more. Of course, that safety car happened on lap 26 or 27, I think it was, to clean up the damage, and that was when the pit stops were forecasted to be for the hard tyres, let alone the mediums. So these guys, I think, will comfortably make it to the end. Leclerc's tyres are 5 laps older. Piastri actually pitted much earlier than Leclerc's going for the lead again. Leclerc's back into the lead. Charles Leclerc, out of nowhere, is back in the lead again, and that is a fantastic move from the Ferrari driver. Out of nowhere, we've got a 3-way fight for the win here between the two Red Bulls and Leclerc, and you think that based on numbers, Red Bull would have a better chance, but for now, Leclerc is back in the lead, and Saturday night's alright, is what I'm going to say in terms of this Grand Prix. It's the first Saturday night Grand Prix since the 1985 South African Grand Prix, which I'm not going to even look at who won it, but I'm guessing, based on probabilities, it was probably Alain Prost. I'm quickly going to check that actually, because I am looking at the screen while everything's going on. And that is incredible. Charles Leclerc going back down the inside of Perez there. And to be fair, I think that based on what happened there, right, Russell definitely should have done better in that situation, because Perez did cede a little bit. And if Russell had done that, he wouldn't have had the collision with Verstappen. Let me just try and see who did win that race, the South African Grand Prix of 1985. And it was Nigel Mansell that won it. It wasn't Alain Prost, it was Nigel Mansell who won it. And here comes Max Verstappen. He's going to try and get ahead of Sergio Perez here. And we've got a duel once again between Verstappen and Leclerc in this race, as Perez is now down to third place. What seemed to be a good result for Perez has turned into something that isn't actually looking so now. Leclerc back in the lead and Verstappen now behind him, and I think this race is almost written already for Verstappen to win. The only thing that could stop him from winning this is a late safety car, because he's got better tyres, and that gives him the advantage. Because remember, when these two were even on tyres, when in terms of wear, Leclerc was actually the better driver. Verstappen said, let's work together here, we can get him, and I think he's referring to Perez. Leclerc is now susceptible to both Red Bulls here, and this is going to be an interesting battle. There's 14 laps to go. Verstappen has 14 laps to get Leclerc, although I don't think it will take him that long to get ahead of him. They're showing Leclerc on the sphere as he is in the race lead at the moment. Oscar Piastri, meanwhile, is just chilling in 4th place, and honestly, Rihanna, I'm not a big fan of your music, right, but those sunglasses are really, really silly, in my opinion. I'm sorry to all the Rihanna fans out there. I'm not a fan of her music. If you follow my Instagram, you will know that I absolutely love the Beatles. Stay with him, double toe here, we can work together. So what they're basically trying to do is they're trying to get Perez into second in this race. Hamilton isn't even in the points at the moment. So if they can do this, if they can... Oh, and here comes Verstappen. Max Verstappen takes the lead. Leclerc's going to try and stay around the outside. He's not going to cede. In the end, he has to. And Verstappen's back in the lead again. And Verstappen hasn't been in the lead since the early stages of this race. But Max Verstappen back ahead into the lead. And things are looking really good for him now to win this race. Perez is now going to try and catch Leclerc for second place. And that was what they were mentioning when they were mentioning the double toe. Although that Ferrari is very good in its tyres, so don't count Leclerc out necessarily in this race. I mean, the chances of Leclerc winning have gone down a lot now. I would estimate less than 5% chance of him winning this. And Ferrari not choosing to pit him under that safety car has been a big what if. If Ferrari did pit him, imagine what could have happened. If he did, he might have actually had a chance of winning this race. This has probably been actually one of the best races of the season, in my opinion, especially to commentate on. It's been a privilege to commentate on it for you guys, as Leclerc is already outside the DRS of Verstappen. Meanwhile, further back in 9th place, we've got a battle between the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz and the Mercedes of George Russell. And these two battling hammer and tong for 9th place. And in the battle for 5th in driver's standings, although 42 points is the difference, so I doubt George is going to be able to actually beat Carlos Sainz in the standings. Earlier on, of course, this is important for the battle between Mercedes and Ferrari, however, because as you can see, there is a 20-point gap, and at the moment, Ferrari look to be having the advantage, as Mercedes are picking up 2 points, Ferrari are picking up 21 at the moment. No, not 21, 19. So, as it stands, Ferrari will only be 3 points behind. If Leclerc does win here today, however, Ferrari will overtake Mercedes. As it stands, Leclerc is keeping up with Verstappen, to be fair. He is only 3/4 of a second behind him. So if he can stay within that 1 second, he could still have a chance of winning this. See, if I'm Leclerc, if I'm Verstappen, right, I would try my very best to just push on. If I'm Leclerc, I try to stick in the DRS, try and conserve my tyres, conserve my battery for the end, let Verstappen try and waste his tyres, and go for it at the end. That's the only thing Leclerc can do, really, in this race. And I've just moved it over to the darts by accident. On Oh my God, Stephen Bunting has got some grey hair now, hasn't he? Charles Leclerc now 1.1 seconds behind Verstappen. So it looks as though the Red Bull is able to pull away, although the Ferrari is good in the final sector of the circuit, so any second, any minute now, Leclerc could be back within a second again. We're going to find out. But we've got a battle going on here for 8th place. Alex Albon and George Russell, the two former F2 drivers in 2018, of course. Albon finishing 3rd in the standings, Russell in the end winning it. Their fellow compatriot Lando Norris out of the race, the only retirement from the race. As I did predict, Leclerc would be back in DRS again. I think, and he was briefly there. He isn't again. He's 1 second behind as George Russell does indeed get past Alex Albon, and Fernando Alonso is trying to get past Carlos Sainz here. The Aston Martins are running quite well in this race in their battle with McLaren. However, Alonso needs to get further up the order. And as I said, Verstappen's engineers saying to him, you have to try and break the toe, because Leclerc is staying with him. He is staying within a second, and as long as Leclerc is there, Verstappen hasn't got anything guaranteed, and you can't take anything for granted in this race. But yeah, as I'm saying, in order for Aston Martin to try and keep that battle with McLaren going, a battle in which the gap is 21 points, Alonso really needs to make some ground, as Albon has let through Carlos Sainz for some reason. I don't know why that's happened, but that's meant that Alonso's now ahead of him as well. And driver of the day wins, 5 for Norris, 3 for Perez, 3 for Verstappen. I think it's fair to say Lando Norris won't be winning it today. And we've got a yellow flag in Sector 2 briefly, and it's now been cleared. I don't know what was going on there. But now Alex Albon is down to 12th in the order, and Williams, who were having a really, really good qualifying, 5th and 6th, is now not really going to plan. George Russell is being told hunt them down in reference to trying to catch the 3 cars in front of him in Gasly, Ocon and Piastri. Meanwhile, Sergio Perez 5/10 behind Charles Leclerc, and he's still Charles Leclerc hanging on. He's 1.1 behind Max Verstappen, 1.1 seconds behind Max Verstappen as they head out the final corner to start lap 41. We're into the final 10 laps of this race, and Verstappen got a 1 second lead to Leclerc, and things are looking good for him at the moment. Perez 1/10, nearly 2/10 faster than Leclerc on the previous lap. Things are looking very, very, very good here for Verstappen, because he holds the advantage. He holds that gap. He holds the lead. As long as he is in the lead, he is in control of his own fate here. Unless his tires just go off the cliff without any warning, or if he has a mechanical issue. But that's really not been a problem for Red Bull this season, mechanical issues. I cannot recall a single time where they've had actual mechanical issues with Verstappen. I mean, his worst finish this season is 5th, and that was in Singapore, and that was due to the car just not having any pace, to be honest. And Leclerc has dropped back quite a lot from Verstappen on this lap. 1.7 seconds now the gap. As I've been talking throughout this lap, Verstappen has been pulling away from Leclerc, and it looks as though the win is out of sight for Leclerc unless Verstappen makes a mistake. And it looks as though it's looking more and more likely that Red Bull are going to get a 1-2 here, and Leclerc will finish 3rd. I can't even remember the last time that Red Bull had a 1-2 this season. It must have been a long time ago, since before the summer break. That's the only time I can really think of when it could have been. And the last time they had a 1-2 was the Italian Grand Prix, and that was in September, nearly over 2 months ago. They haven't had a 1-2 since the Italian Grand Prix. Perez hasn't had a podium since the Italian Grand Prix. He hasn't finished any higher than 4th since the Italian Grand Prix. And this is a replay, and has Leclerc gotten passed by Perez now? I think he might have done. No, he hasn't. This is a replay of Leclerc battling with Verstappen. I was checking the statistics very quickly. Apologies, ladies and gentlemen, for watching this on replay. Nobody's currently watching me right now, but I don't mind. Just commentating, doing my own thing. But yeah, Verstappen is in the lead, and this is a replay of Lance Stroll, who is now up into 6th place. He's gotten ahead of the Alpine of Pierre Gasly, and he's now going to try and hunt down Esteban Ocon. You can see him just up the road there, and Leclerc and Perez are still battling for second. He's still not lost sight of Verstappen, has Leclerc, but he is a little bit further behind him now. Those tyres are 5 laps older. He's got another 8 laps to do with them, and that would be 28 laps he's done with those tyres. Although if you include the laps under the safety car, it's not as many. It is now 7 o'clock roughly, 7:20. So we are an hour and 20 minutes into this race. So more people are going to probably watch this now because it's actually a manageable time for some people. Because, you know, it is 7 o'clock in the morning. This is when people get up for work. And for those of you who don't work, term time, unlucky. Meanwhile, Fernando Alonso right behind Carlos Sainz. He's trying to get himself up into 9th in this race. And if he can, and Lance Stroll can get up into 5th, then things would be looking a little bit better for Aston Martin. The gap is now 2 seconds between Verstappen and Leclerc. And by every lap, as every lap goes on, Verstappen pulls away more from Leclerc. Leclerc loses more time in this race to Perez, and Perez just is taking his time with them, waiting for his tyres to go off. And you can see that they are beginning to go off because Verstappen's just pulling away from him as if, you know, Leclerc has, you know, got a massive, like, ton of weight he's pulling behind him. Oh, and Leclerc makes a mistake. Leclerc's ran wide, and Perez is now second. Leclerc is now behind Perez in this race. He's made a mistake, and he's down to third. And look who's in the Ferrari garage. I think I just saw a certain footballer by the name of Zlatan Ibrahimovic. But yeah, Leclerc is now down to third, and Perez is comfortably second now, 1.4 seconds gap. And Red Bull are on for their first 1-2 since the Italian Grand Prix in September, some 2 months ago, and it's a lockup that's caused that for Leclerc. His tyres are beginning to go off a little bit, and he just needs to manage the rest of this race, get to the end, and then he'll be good. But I think it's fair to say the battle for the win is now over. Red Bull 1-2 is on the cards once again. And despite all the entertainment, Max Verstappen seems to be coming out on top once again. Oscar Piastri's coming into the pits, and that is a very interesting strategy call there from McLaren. Leclerc is really got to be careful here, because if he doesn't manage his tyres well enough, Esteban Ocon could potentially... Nah, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. I don't know why Piastri's pitted now, because he's fallen right behind in the order. 1.9 second pit stop, but he's outside of the points. He's got to really push to try and close up. And there goes the chances of McLaren gaining big points on Aston Martin in this race. And actually, it's the other way around now, because if Lance Stroll can get ahead of Esteban Ocon, he could potentially hunt down Charles Leclerc. 6 laps to go, 9 second gap. He's going to gain about a second and a bit per lap, plus getting past Esteban Ocon. Actually, it's 11 seconds. Yeah, he's not going to catch him. I'm being really overly optimistic. Russell's being told we are still playing P4 here. So they're forecasted to finish in 4th place. And that does seem about right. It's 3.7 seconds behind Esteban Ocon. And 1.9 seconds behind Lance Stroll. Of course, Stroll and Russell both on the same strategy pretty much. And here comes Fernando Alonso going... It's the birds, I think, outside. Here comes Fernando Alonso going past Pierre Gasly in this race. He's up into 8th, and Aston Martin are looking better and better as this race has gone on in their battle with McLaren for 4th in the Constructors. And it's the same with Ferrari v Mercedes, as Mercedes are running 6th and 10th. Well, that's probably going to become 6th and 9th in a sec, as here comes Lewis Hamilton past Pierre Gasly for 9th place. So as it stands, Red Bull pull even further ahead. Ferrari are picking up 21 points. Mercedes are picking up 10. So that gap, the gap that is 20 points, is going to go down to 9. And then the gap of 21 points between McLaren and Aston Martin is also going to go down, as Aston Martin are picking up 14 points in this race compared to McLaren picking up 0 points. So, to summarise, Stroll gets up into 4th, Alonso gets up into 6th, and I'm pretty sure Aston Martin, no, they need to finish 4th and 5th, for them to overtake McLaren heading into the final Grand Prix of the season. Russell is gaining 7/10 a lap on Stroll, and he is really going for it here. So I reckon Stroll will probably finish in 5th. He'll get Ocon, but he'll get passed by Russell, and in the end, Russell will finish 4th in a race that you'll think, had I not had that collision, I could have been fighting for the podium places. But yeah, Leclerc's actually kept up with Perez, to be fair, and he could actually still get 2nd. Although the chances of that happening are quite low because of the difference in tyre wear between the two cars. And that lockup certainly will not have helped Leclerc's front left tyre because, well, what can I say? A lockup really degradates the tyre. And here's a battle here between Hamilton and Alonso. This is going to be really important for the battle between McLaren and Mercedes in the McLaren and Aston Martin, I should say, in the constructors, because if Alonso gets past, that's another 2 points he's losing for Aston Martin. Stroll, however, if he can get ahead of Ocon and stay ahead of Russell, this move wouldn't matter if Hamilton did get ahead of Alonso, and these two have been battling for a long time in Formula 1. 16 years they've been battling, and if you're counting championship years, 2007, 2010, 2011, 2012, and 2013, they've been battling in the driver standings at some point in the season, and of course this year as well, for the first time in a decade, that Fernando Alonso has been consistently fighting for podiums. And he'll be really happy with this season, although the second half of the season has really not been great for Aston Martin. The other teams, McLaren, Mercedes and Ferrari, have upgraded, while Aston Martin have fallen further behind the pack. They're running 5th and 8th at the moment, which they won't be disappointed with, but I think they will want more, of course, as earlier on in the season they were looking really good. And here comes Lewis Hamilton. He's going to go for the move, and he's gone ahead of Fernando Alonso. That was going to happen. You could tell it was going to happen. Hamilton does have the better pace than Alonso, and now he's going to try and catch Carlos Sainz in this race, in that big battle between Mercedes and Ferrari in the driver standings. Alonso's just going to try and hang fire, try and keep up with Hamilton, and see if he can make an impact on their battle. And we've got a yellow flag in Sector 3, and I don't know who it's for. It's for Nico Hülkenberg, and we might have a late safety car here, and no, Hülkenberg has pulled off to the side of the road. Haas's home race has not gone to plan once again, and he is out of the race. He's gone off a good area though, so he's gone off the track, so that means he at the marshal's post, so that means that there won't be a safety car or a virtual safety car. It must be a mechanical problem for him, as Fernando Alonso and Charles Leclerc are both in the same position here. They're trying to keep up with the cars in front of them. In Alonso's case, it is Lewis Hamilton. In Leclerc's case, it's Sergio Perez, and they're trying their very best to do well here. Perez thoroughly does deserve driver of the day, in my opinion, although he definitely should have done better in qualifying, because he is in the fastest car in the grid. He should have gotten at least into Q3 and qualified at least in the top 5, but he didn't. And, well, the culmination of that is, well, it's not very clear based on how the results are looking, but believe it or not, he did actually start 11th on the grid, not to contrary belief in the top 5 based on the order. And Leclerc is doing really well here. I would honestly, considering the tools he's been given, Charles Leclerc has worked a miracle here. I mean, he could still finish second. There's 3 laps to go in this race, and then I'll head off and have my breakfast and go back to bed, if I'm being completely honest with you guys. And Tsunoda's got a problem. He's got a gearbox issue. He's running in 17th in this race. The fastest lap of the race goes to Oscar Piastri, and the aim of Piastri here is to try and get back into the points in the last 3 laps. I don't know if he's going to be able to do it, but well, I don't know if he's going to be able to get multiple points. He's going to get a point here surely, because he is behind Pierre Gasly 1.4 seconds. He is running very quickly. Then again, he does have the fastest lap, so if he does get into that 10th place, he will get that extra point. Stroll and Russell battling for 5th place here. Stroll isn't making an impact on Ocon, surprisingly, and I think Stroll's just trying to defend now from Russell and get to the end of the race. with a 5th place finish, and I think he will be happy with that, all things considered. Alonso will be happy with the 9th, I think, after how difficult this race has been for him. And we've got another yellow flag in Sector 3, and I think it's for Yuki Tsunoda, and it is, and Tsunoda is trying to pull off the same place Nico Hülkenberg has pulled off, and he's done a good job of it. So now we are down to 17 runners in this race. And here comes George Russell. He's going to go around the outside of Lance Stroll. Has he gotten ahead? I think he has. Into the braking zone. He is comfortably ahead. And Aston Martin have lost 2 points there to McLaren. 2 crucial points in their fight for 4th in the Constructors. As Piastri now moves up into 10th. And he now has 2 points. The same amount as Alonso. Meaning overall Aston Martin are gaining 8 points on McLaren in that battle. And we're heading on to the final 2 laps of this race. Perez is still only just ahead of Leclerc, and Red Bull will not be very comfortable with their situation with Perez, because if Leclerc can just pressure Perez enough, he could make a mistake and go further behind in the pack compared to Leclerc. Leclerc could get ahead of him again if he forces a mistake out of him. And as it stands, like I said, Aston Martin are gaining 8 points in McLaren, and Ferrari are gaining a decent chunk on Mercedes. Leclerc is gaining 5 on Russell, and Sainz is gaining 2 on Hamilton. So Mercedes are picking up 14 points. Ferrari, along with Leclerc, are picking up 15, but if you add on Sainz's total, they're picking up 21. So that gap is going to go down. Leclerc is right behind Perez here, and he's going to go for a late race push. He's going to try and get ahead of him, and it's going to be a very, very interesting last lap duel here Leclerc is going to entertain us with. And I don't know what team radio Verstappen's getting, but I think what they're telling him to do is to help Perez get a tiny little toe, because Leclerc is really putting him under pressure here. And again, this shows how the Red Bull car is suited to Max Verstappen and not to anybody else. And compared to MotoGP, where Honda designed a bike specifically around Marc Marquez for many years, and it paid off for them beautifully, but their second riders suffered with it. And it was the same thing with Yamaha and Fabio Quartararo in recent years. Because if you look at how he's done, how Fabio Quartararo's done this year, he's not done very well at all. But yeah, Leclerc's 8 tenths back. Verstappen slowed down a lot for Perez to try and help him get a toe, and it has worked. He is 8 tenths clear of him now. Piastri has gotten ahead of Gasly, but he's not making enough of an impact to close up on Alonso. Russell's trying to get ahead of Ocon here, and if Russell can get ahead of Ocon in the final lap, he could try and force a mistake out of Ocon, and Stroll could try and capitalise on that. However, I doubt Stroll will make a move. He is 1.6 seconds back from Russell, and Russell does need to make a little bit more ground up to try and get ahead. They're heading into the final couple of corners now, and I think Perez is going to hang on to it. Leclerc's going to go for it down the inside, and it's a brilliant move right at the end from Charles Leclerc. And he gets up into second place, and Charles Leclerc has stopped Red Bull potentially from getting their first 1-2 since September. Max Verstappen wins the Las Vegas Grand Prix. Charles Leclerc, with a brilliant last second move, has got up into second. And fourth place is going to be George Russell, who does manage to get Esteban Ocon in the end. And that is a fantastic result for him. And those forecasts were correct in assuming he could get fourth. Lance Stroll finishes sixth, his best, his back-to-back top 6 finishes for him. And Carlos Sainz is 7th. George Russell, due to that penalty, has dropped down to 8th. And so, Aston Martin have picked up 10 points. And that is going to be really important for their battle with McLaren in the standings. But Max Verstappen wins, and that was a phenomenal drive from Charles Leclerc. I have to say, Charles Leclerc, for me, was the driver of the day. He drove superbly considering the hand he got dealt, and Verstappen wins again. Must be about his 19th win of the season or something like that. I mean, Perez won twice, Sainz won once. This is the 22nd race of the season. I think it's like his 19th win of the season. I'm not surprised. Verstappen has been in a different league this year, and it looks as though he is going to break more and more records in Formula One history. I think because of today, he might not get that percentage record for laps led. Jim Clark and Alberto Ascari holding that record for most amount of laps, percentages of laps led, and Leclerc will be annoyed with the strategy he got given. I think that if Leclerc had pitted during that safety car, he could have won that race. I think he would have won that race because he did have that gap to Verstappen. He did have the cars between him and Verstappen, and had he pitted, he would have been ahead of those cars. And I think he would have won that race if he had been given a better strategy, a better hand. And Charles Leclerc has, in the end, won driver of the day, and that is very, 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 very good, because I think that is deserved of him. 21% of the vote has been given to him, and it's his 5th podium of the season, and he's had a very, very up and down season, but that was a very, very good result for him, and that moves him closer to Carlos Sainz in the championship and to Lando Norris. Crucially, he is now only 7 points behind Lando Norris in the standings, heading into the final race of the season, and that battle for 4th place is heating up. For 6th place, I should say, is heating up. Or actually, no, it is the battle for 4th place between Fernando Alonso, Lando Norris, Charles Leclerc, and Carlos Sainz, who are all in that fight. George Russell is no longer can no longer mathematically get there, but this was a brilliant move from Leclerc, a last corner overtake, a last braking zone overtake, and it is brilliance there from Charles Leclerc, and that is why he drives for Ferrari and not for Haas. But thank you all very much for watching this stream. I am going to head back to bed now. My mum messaged me saying, keep that down please. I didn't get the message until a few minutes ago. But yeah, thank you all very much for watching it. George Russell did the exact same to Esteban Ocon. But yeah,